Good evening, class. My name's Tiffany Thomas, and I focused my research on coping strategies and techniques for stress in adolescence. Basically, my abstract is um, starts off saying everyone experiences stress in some form, regardless of their stage of development. How it's managed is what interests researchers the most. Basically, the children and adolescents examined reported several stressors, actually. These included family, school, peers, and relationships, to name a few. There were several coping mechanisms recorded across all studies that I found, many of which were effective. However, some children continue to struggle with adaptation to cope. In some instances, reliance on alcohol and illegal drugs were the children's form of coping mechanisms. My main purpose, I kind of wanted to ask, how can strategies and techniques used by counselors and therapists effectively help teenagers cope with stress due to the many problems that they go through in their teenage years, whether it's school, relationships, anything of that sort? Basically, how I did it was I used two different databases, EBSCOhost and Google Scholar. Through EBSCOhost, I used ERIC and PsycInfo. I found peer-reviewed and full-text articles. I focused my participants to be teenagers still in grade school that have experienced stress or are using coping mechanisms to handle their stress. And I wanted counselors and therapists to play a role somehow in any study done. And I found over 50 total results. I say 50 plus just because going through the different searching keywords, there was lots of mix-up, I guess. But below that are some keywords I used. For example, coping strategies, adolescents, teenagers, stress, acceptance, problem-focused coping, emotion-focused coping, things of that sort. So the results I found, my first study by Chandra and Batata, they investigated teen perceptions of stress, their social support network, and the use of coping strategies. And they found that 24% boys and 20% girls used avoidance as a coping mechanism, kind of just trying to get rid of the problem that they have. More girls actually confessed to actively seeking support through friends or close family members or writing down their feelings, while boys resorted to playing sports or anger, throwing things to relieve their stress. The second study I used was was done through a Spanish journal where the Freud and the rest of his researchers analyzed the relationship between symptoms of stress and drug use in adolescents. Actually found that 20.5% of the adolescents part of the study were regular users of drugs and alcohol to deal with their stress. And then that leaves the 79.5% as non or occasional users. So they basically found that alcohol and drug use is, in fact, an indicator of higher stress levels. The third study that I found, done by Leonard and the rest of his crew, focused on stress, coping, and substance use among high school youth in private schools. The studies were directed towards problem-focused coping, emotion-focused coping, and family-based factors to figure out results. Actually 49%, so almost half of students feel stressed daily, and then 31% reported that they somewhat experience stress. So during stress, I guess the symptoms that some of the kids may feel are that 26% actually said that they experienced depression when they're stressed, and then about 36% use alcohol and drugs. For the fourth study, Karnevsky and the rest of his researchers compared adolescents and adults in the reporting of cognitive coping strategies and their relationship to symptoms of depression and anxiety. So the predictors that they found of depression symptoms were rumination, self-blame, positive reprisal, and catastrophizing, if that's how you say it. The predictors of anxiety symptoms in teens and adults were rumination and self-blame. For the fifth study, Foltz wanted to discover teenagers' thoughts on the idea of therapy. So he analyzed kids that were in a residential home and gave them two different types of tests. One asked open-ended questions, and 70% of the kids gave positive responses towards on how they felt about therapy. 17% didn't like it, and 13% didn't really have a good or bad thing to say about it. So the high majority of subjects actually agreed or totally agreed that therapy was actually beneficial, and developing a relationship with the therapist was of great benefit also, and in turn is more effective. For the sixth resource, Ellis wanted to analyze experiences of actually being a kid, kind of entering the mind of what they think about. And he found that anti-stress occurs when kids are in safe care and being well regarded. Some sources of comfort that the kids reported were like special objects, pets, making wishes, and fantasizing at a young age. So for my discussion section, basically reducing initial stress will help improve coping. And some other strategies found with changing school cultures, involving families, and better access to services or resources will also help with this. So the answer to my purpose question earlier in this presentation is that the importance and awareness of therapy and coping strategies is imperative to know about in order to help reduce stress and problems in the lives of young kids. Some limitations I actually found on my part of this study was that narrowing the participant pool to adolescent age lowers the ability to find quality resources, just because most studies relating to therapy are done on adults due to the informed consent that's needed on minors. And most research was done by others, like the researchers that I found. So I actually wish I could have done my own research, as I have an interest in counseling, and I spend so much time in the school setting as it is already. But I think I'm going to be more aware of these issues in my everyday life now. But so for some suggestions towards future research, most of these studies were exploratory, so replication is recommended. I don't think this topic can be overstudied just because it's a hazard to our youth. And placing an emphasis on creating relationships will definitely result in effective therapy and hopefully make a difference in any kids' lives. Hope y'all enjoyed. Thanks.